Dominic Reyes stood coldly within his estate's private courtyard, his expression hard and unforgiving as two of his men held an older man firmly between them. Reports had reached Dominic that significant funds had gone missing from one of his organization's key accounts, and evidence, though circumstantial, pointed directly toward Samuel Alvarez, a long-time accountant who had worked for the family's business for over a decade. "You've served this organization loyally for years, Samuel," Dominic said coldly, studying the older man's frightened yet defiant expression. "Explain to me why nearly $200,000 has disappeared from accounts under your direct management." Samuel's voice trembled, though determination remained evident in his eyes. "I swear to you, Mr. Reyes, I haven't taken anything," he said firmly. "Someone else must be responsible. I've dedicated my entire career to honest, careful work." Dominic's expression remained unmoved, cold skepticism evident clearly in his controlled demeanor. "The evidence suggests otherwise," he said firmly. "I'm afraid explanations alone won't be sufficient." As tension mounted within the courtyard, Maria Alvarez, Samuel's daughter, who worked quietly as a maid within Dominic's grand estate, happened to glance out from a nearby window while completing her afternoon duties. Horrified at witnessing her father held forcefully by Dominic's men, she dropped what she was carrying instantly, rushing desperately outside without hesitation. "Please stop," Maria cried out urgently, rushing directly toward the tense confrontation, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't hurt him. He's my father." Dominic's men glanced uncertainly toward their boss, clearly surprised by Maria's sudden, desperate intervention. Dominic himself turned sharply toward Maria's voice, his cold, controlled expression shifting instantly into genuine shock and disbelief as he studied Samuel's face closely once more, memories long buried suddenly resurfacing vividly within his mind. "Samuel Alvarez," Dominic repeated slowly, his voice carrying unmistakable disbelief. "You're Maria's father?" Maria, confused by Dominic's sudden shift in demeanor, studied him carefully, uncertain exactly what was happening. "Yes," she said quickly, desperation evident clearly in her trembling voice. "Please, whatever mistake you believe he's made, I promise you, he's an honest man. He would never steal from anyone." Dominic remained silent for a long, tense moment, his mind racing rapidly as he processed the unexpected, shocking realization that the man accused before him was the very same Samuel Alvarez who had once worked closely alongside his own father many years earlier, someone connected deeply and painfully to Dominic's own hidden past. "Release him," Dominic instructed suddenly, his voice firm yet noticeably shaken. His men, surprised by the abrupt change in command, quickly complied, releasing Samuel from their tight grip. Maria rushed immediately to her father's side, embracing him tightly, relief and confusion evident clearly in her tearful expression. "Papa, are you all right?" she asked anxiously. Samuel nodded slowly, though clear confusion remained evident in his own expression as he studied Dominic carefully. "Mr. Reyes," he said cautiously, "I don't understand. Why have you suddenly changed your position?" Dominic studied Samuel closely, complicated emotions evident clearly beneath his usually guarded exterior. "We'll discuss this properly, privately," he said firmly, though his voice carried an unfamiliar vulnerability. "For now, understand clearly that no harm will come to you until I've fully investigated this situation myself." Maria studied Dominic carefully, confusion and cautious relief evident clearly in her own expression. "Thank you," she said softly, though clear uncertainty lingered regarding Dominic's sudden shift in behavior. "I don't understand what's happening, but thank you for reconsidering." Dominic nodded distractedly, his mind still reeling from the unexpected recognition that had suddenly resurfaced painful, long-buried memories from his past. "Please, both of you, wait for me inside," he instructed quietly, his tone still carrying clear traces of shock and unresolved emotion. As Maria helped her visibly shaken father inside the estate, Dominic remained alone in the courtyard, his mind racing anxiously as he tried to process the unexpected, shocking connection he had just discovered. He hadn't anticipated ever encountering Samuel Alvarez again, believing that particular chapter of his life had remained safely buried within his past. Yet now, faced directly with Samuel's presence once again, Dominic found himself confronting emotions and memories he had carefully avoided for years, uncertain exactly how this unexpected reunion would ultimately unfold, or how significantly it might soon transform his understanding of his own hidden history. Later that evening, Dominic summoned Samuel privately to his office, his expression thoughtful yet clearly still processing the unexpected shock of their earlier confrontation. Maria waited anxiously nearby, uncertain what to expect from this private meeting between her father and the powerful mafia boss. "Samuel," Dominic began carefully, studying the older man closely, "I need to properly investigate the accusations against you before proceeding further. But first, I have to ask directly, do you remember me?" Samuel studied Dominic carefully, confusion evident clearly in his expression as he tried to place the younger man's face. "I'm sorry, Mr. Reyes," he admitted honestly. "I don't recognize you specifically, though your family name is certainly familiar to me." Dominic nodded slowly, understanding evident clearly in his thoughtful expression. "I was quite young when you worked for my father," he explained carefully. "Perhaps only 7 or 8 years old at the time." Samuel's eyes widened slightly with dawning recognition. "You're Alessandro Reyes's son," he said slowly, memories clearly resurfacing within him. "I worked closely with your father for several years, managing his business accounts." Dominic nodded, his expression carefully composed despite the clear emotional weight evident beneath his controlled demeanor. "I have vague memories from that time," he admitted honestly, "though certain events remain unclear to me even now." Samuel studied him carefully, curiosity and cautious concern evident clearly in his own expression. "What exactly do you recall, Mr. Reyes?" he asked gently. Dominic hesitated, clearly reluctant to fully revisit painful memories from his childhood. "There was an incident," he said carefully, "involving danger to my own safety. I recall vaguely that someone intervened significantly, though the details remain unclear." Samuel's expression shifted subtly, clear recognition and emotion evident in his own eyes. "I remember that day clearly," he said quietly, his voice carrying genuine emotion. "It was a dangerous situation, and I did what I felt was necessary to protect you." Dominic studied him closely, complicated emotions evident clearly beneath his controlled exterior. "I'd like to understand exactly what happened," he said honestly. "But first, let's address the immediate situation regarding the missing funds." Samuel nodded firmly, appreciation evident clearly in his own expression. "Thank you for reconsidering, Mr. Reyes," he said sincerely. "I promise you, I've had no involvement whatsoever in any theft from your organization." Dominic studied him carefully, genuine trust evident clearly in his gaze despite the seriousness of the accusations. "I believe you," he said honestly, surprising even himself with the sincerity of his own statement. "I'll have my men conduct a thorough investigation immediately, focusing specifically on any discrepancies within the accounts you managed." Maria, who had been anxiously waiting nearby, finally entered the room, relief evident clearly in her expression at hearing Dominic's reassurance. "Thank you, Mr. Reyes," she said sincerely. "I promise you, my father is an honest man." Dominic studied Maria closely, admiration and warmth evident clearly beneath his usually guarded exterior. "I understand that clearly now," he said sincerely. "I apologize for the distress this situation has caused you both." Over the following days, Dominic personally oversaw a thorough investigation into the missing funds, carefully reviewing financial records and interviewing key personnel involved in managing the organization's accounts. Slowly, evidence began emerging that clearly pointed toward another employee, Anthony Reyes, no relation to Dominic, who had recently taken on additional responsibilities within the finance department. "It appears Anthony has been quietly manipulating financial records," Marco reported carefully during a private briefing with Dominic. "He's cleverly framed the discrepancies to implicate Samuel directly, likely hoping to eliminate him as a scapegoat while continuing his own scheme." Dominic's expression hardened instantly, understanding clearly the seriousness of this discovery. "Gather concrete evidence against Anthony immediately," he instructed firmly. "I want this resolved properly, ensuring Samuel's name is completely cleared." As the investigation progressed steadily, Dominic found himself increasingly grateful for the opportunity to properly address the injustice against Samuel, while also growing increasingly aware of his own deepening admiration for Maria's quiet strength, loyalty, and genuine devotion to her father. Neither Dominic nor Maria yet realized clearly, however, that Anthony, sensing his scheme unraveling, had already begun planning a desperate, dangerous move to protect his own interests. 20 years earlier, Dominic had been a curious, energetic 7-year-old boy, often accompanying his father, Alessandro Reyes, to various business meetings held within their family estate. Samuel Alvarez, then a trusted young accountant working closely alongside Alessandro, had frequently looked after young Dominic during these meetings, forming a warm, protective bond with the energetic child. One particular afternoon, tensions had escalated unexpectedly during a business negotiation between Alessandro and a rival family, resulting in a sudden, violent confrontation within the estate's private courtyard. Dominic, curious and unaware of the danger, had wandered innocently into the courtyard just as gunfire erupted unexpectedly between the two rival groups. Samuel, noticing young Dominic's dangerous proximity to the escalating violence, had reacted instantly and instinctively, rushing forward without hesitation to shield the young boy from harm. He had pulled Dominic quickly behind a stone pillar, using his own body to protect him from the chaos and danger surrounding them, sustaining a serious injury himself in the process as a stray bullet grazed his shoulder. The incident had ended quickly, though the danger and chaos of those terrifying moments had left a lasting impression on young Dominic, memories he had unconsciously suppressed over the years, unable to fully process the trauma of nearly losing his life at such a young age. Alessandro, grateful beyond words for Samuel's selfless bravery, had quietly ensured Samuel received proper medical care and generous compensation for his injury. However, shortly afterward, escalating tensions and increasing danger within the family's business had prompted Samuel to quietly resign from his position, wanting to protect his own young family, including his infant daughter Maria, from the inherent dangers of organized crime. Alessandro had respected Samuel's decision, quietly severing professional ties while ensuring Samuel received a generous parting settlement, though the specific details and significance of that dangerous day had faded gradually from young Dominic's conscious memory over the years, buried beneath the weight of subsequent tragedies and responsibilities that eventually shaped him into the guarded, controlled leader he had become. Now, reflecting deeply on Samuel's unexpected reappearance in his life, Dominic found himself confronting these long-buried memories directly, genuine gratitude and admiration resurfacing powerfully within him as the full significance of Samuel's selfless sacrifice became clear once again. One quiet evening, Dominic invited Samuel privately to discuss openly the events of that dangerous day so many years earlier. "I remember now," Dominic admitted honestly, emotion evident clearly in his voice. "You saved my life that day, risking your own safety without hesitation." Samuel nodded, his own expression reflecting quiet emotion. "I couldn't allow anything to happen to you," he said simply. "You were just a child, caught unexpectedly in danger that had nothing to do with you." Dominic studied him closely, genuine gratitude and admiration evident clearly in his gaze. "I owe you a debt I never properly acknowledged," he said sincerely. "I'm deeply sorry it's taken this long, and under such unfortunate circumstances, to properly recognize your sacrifice." Samuel shook his head gently, humility evident clearly in his expression. "You owe me nothing, Mr. Reyes," he said honestly. "I did what any decent person would do, protecting an innocent child from danger." Dominic considered his words carefully, admiration deepening steadily within him. "Regardless, I intend to ensure you receive the recognition and protection you deserve, especially now that I understand clearly the debt I owe your family." Maria, who had been listening quietly nearby, felt tears of emotion forming gently in her eyes at hearing this remarkable, unexpected history unfold. "I had no idea," she admitted softly, studying her father with renewed admiration and pride. "You never spoke of this, Papa." Samuel smiled gently at his daughter, warmth evident clearly in his expression. "It wasn't something I felt necessary to share," he said honestly. "I simply did what was right at the time." Dominic studied Maria closely, genuine warmth and admiration evident clearly in his own gaze. "Your father's humility and selflessness clearly run deeply within your own family," he said sincerely. "It's evident clearly in the genuine dedication and loyalty you've shown as well." Maria blushed softly, appreciation evident clearly in her expression. "Thank you, Mr. Reyes," she said sincerely. "That means a great deal, especially given everything we've learned today." As their conversation deepened further into the evening, Dominic found himself increasingly resolved to protect Samuel and Maria fully, understanding clearly now the profound debt he owed their family. Yet neither Dominic nor Maria realized clearly that Anthony, growing increasingly desperate as his scheme continued unraveling, had already begun planning a dangerous, final attempt to silence Samuel and protect his own carefully hidden guilt. With Samuel's history now fully understood, Dominic moved quickly to ensure both Samuel and Maria received proper protection while the investigation into Anthony continued. He arranged for Samuel to remain temporarily within the estate's guest quarters, wanting to keep a close, personal watch over the man who had once saved his life so selflessly. Maria found herself increasingly grateful for Dominic's evident care and attention, though she remained mindful of the significant boundaries between her position as a household maid and his powerful, complicated world. Despite this awareness, she found herself drawn increasingly toward Dominic's genuine warmth and integrity, qualities she hadn't anticipated from someone with such a fearsome reputation. One afternoon, as Maria delivered a tray of refreshments to Dominic's office, she found him quietly reviewing documents related to the ongoing investigation. "How is the investigation progressing?" she asked carefully, setting the tray down gently. Dominic looked up, warmth evident clearly in his expression at her thoughtful gesture. "We're gathering solid evidence against Anthony," he explained honestly. "It should be enough to clear your father's name completely very soon." Maria smiled with genuine relief. "Thank you for taking this so seriously," she said sincerely. "I know you didn't have to personally involve yourself this deeply." Dominic studied her closely, sincerity evident clearly in his gaze. "Your father saved my life," he said honestly. "Ensuring his safety and reputation is the very least I can do in return." Maria studied him thoughtfully, admiration deepening steadily within her. "You've shown remarkable integrity throughout this entire situation," she said softly. "It's not what I expected, given your reputation." Dominic allowed a small, genuine smile to form, something increasingly familiar in Maria's presence. "Perhaps reputations don't always tell the complete story," he said quietly, echoing sentiments he had expressed once before to another woman who had similarly challenged his guarded exterior. Their conversations continued deepening naturally over the following days, moving gradually beyond strictly professional matters into more personal, meaningful territory. Dominic found himself increasingly drawn toward Maria's quiet intelligence, genuine warmth, and unwavering loyalty toward her father, qualities he deeply admired and respected. However, Dominic remained acutely aware of the complicated professional boundaries separating them, understanding clearly the potential complications that could arise from pursuing a personal relationship with someone employed directly within his household. Despite this awareness, he found himself increasingly unable to ignore the genuine connection steadily developing between them. One evening, as Maria prepared to leave following another meaningful conversation, Dominic hesitated before speaking directly. "Maria," he began carefully, "I want to be honest with you about something." Maria studied him curiously, sensing the seriousness behind his tone. "What is it?" she asked gently. Dominic considered his words carefully before continuing honestly. "I found myself increasingly drawn toward your company these past few days," he admitted sincerely. "Beyond simply gratitude toward your father, I've genuinely enjoyed getting to know you personally." Maria felt her heart flutter slightly at his sincere admission, though she remained cautious, aware clearly of the complicated boundaries surrounding their situation. "I've enjoyed our conversations as well," she admitted honestly, "though I understand the complications such feelings might create, given my position here." Dominic nodded understandingly, respecting her cautious honesty. "I don't wish to make you uncomfortable," he said gently. "I simply wanted to be honest about my own feelings, regardless of how we choose to proceed." Maria studied him closely, warmth and genuine appreciation evident clearly in her own expression. "Thank you for your honesty," she said softly. "I think we should focus first on ensuring my father's safety completely, before considering anything further between us." Dominic nodded firmly, agreement clear in his own expression. "That's fair," he said sincerely. "Your father's safety and vindication remain our priority." As their conversation concluded that evening, both Dominic and Maria understood clearly that their growing connection would need to navigate careful, complicated boundaries, especially as the investigation into Anthony's scheme continued progressing toward its inevitable, dangerous conclusion. As Dominic's investigation into Anthony's scheme drew closer to conclusive evidence, Anthony himself grew increasingly desperate, recognizing clearly that his carefully constructed deception was quickly unraveling. Realizing that Samuel's exoneration would inevitably expose his own guilt, Anthony began considering increasingly reckless measures to protect himself from the consequences of his actions. "They're getting close," Anthony muttered anxiously to himself one evening, reviewing the mounting evidence Dominic's team had gathered against him. Desperate and cornered, he decided drastic action was necessary, believing that silencing Samuel and Maria permanently might be his only remaining option to avoid complete exposure and inevitable retribution. Late one evening, as Maria finished her usual household duties, she noticed Anthony lingering unusually close to the estate's private wing, his expression tense and calculating. Sensing something wrong, she quickly informed Dominic, who immediately recognized the potential danger. "Increase security around Samuel immediately," Dominic instructed firmly, urgency evident clearly in his tone. "Anthony's growing desperate, and desperate men are dangerous." Despite these precautions, Anthony proved more resourceful than anticipated. Later that same night, he managed to bypass a brief gap in security, quietly entering the guest quarters where Samuel rested, intending to eliminate the threat he represented once and for all. Maria, unable to sleep due to her lingering unease, decided to check on her father one final time before retiring for the night. As she approached his room, she was horrified to discover Anthony standing menacingly over her father, a weapon drawn threateningly. "Anthony!" she screamed in terror, alerting nearby security immediately. "Someone help, please." Startled by Maria's sudden intrusion, Anthony hesitated briefly, giving Samuel just enough time to react defensively, pushing Anthony's weapon aside as security rushed quickly into the room. Dominic, alerted immediately by the commotion, arrived swiftly, his expression cold and furious upon witnessing the dangerous situation unfolding. "Anthony," Dominic said coldly, authority evident clearly in his tone, "your reckless desperation ends now." Anthony, cornered and clearly panicked, attempted a final desperate escape, only to be swiftly subdued and restrained by Dominic's security team. Maria rushed quickly to her father's side, relief and fear mixing intensely within her as she checked carefully to ensure he remained unharmed. "Papa, are you all right?" she asked anxiously, embracing him tightly. Samuel nodded, though clearly shaken by the frightening encounter. "I'm fine, thanks to your timely intervention," he reassured her gently. Dominic studied Anthony coldly, anger evident clearly beneath his controlled exterior. "Your greed and desperation nearly cost an innocent man his life," he said firmly. "You'll face full consequences for your actions." Anthony, recognizing the futility of further resistance, offered no argument, clearly resigned to the serious repercussions awaiting him. Dominic's men quickly secured him, ensuring he would face appropriate justice for his reckless, dangerous scheme. Later that evening, once the immediate danger had fully passed, Dominic personally checked on Samuel and Maria, genuine concern and relief evident clearly in his expression. "I'm deeply sorry this situation escalated so dangerously," he said sincerely. "I should have anticipated Anthony's desperation sooner." Maria studied him carefully, gratitude and warmth evident clearly in her tearful gaze. "You couldn't have known how far he'd go," she said softly. "Thank you for acting so quickly once the danger became clear." Dominic took her hand gently, sincerity clear in his expression. "I promise you both, this danger is now completely resolved," he reassured them firmly. "Your father's name will be fully cleared, and justice will be properly served." Samuel studied Dominic closely, genuine gratitude evident clearly in his own expression. "Thank you, Mr. Reyes," he said sincerely, "for protecting my daughter and me, and for ensuring justice prevails." As the immediate danger fully subsided, both Dominic and Maria understood clearly that their bond had grown even stronger through this harrowing ordeal, setting the stage for a genuine acknowledgement of the love that had steadily developed between them throughout this dangerous, unexpected journey. And the days following Anthony's arrest, the estate slowly began settling back into a calmer rhythm, though the events of that frightening night lingered heavily in everyone's minds. Dominic personally oversaw the final stages of the investigation, wanting to ensure that Samuel's name was cleared completely and publicly, leaving no doubt whatsoever about his innocence. He gathered his most senior associates within the estate's main hall, along with several trusted business partners who had heard whispers of the recent scandal. Standing before them, Dominic spoke with calm, deliberate authority. Several weeks ago, accusations were made against Samuel Alvarez, a man who served this family with honesty and distinction for over a decade, he began firmly. Those accusations were false, manufactured by Anthony Reyes in an attempt to cover his own theft and protect himself from exposure. Murmurs rippled through the gathered crowd as Dominic continued, presenting clear, undeniable evidence of Anthony's guilt, falsified records, hidden transactions, and a trail of deception that had been carefully unraveled over the preceding weeks. "Samuel Alvarez is completely innocent," Dominic declared clearly, his voice carrying no room for doubt. "I want everyone here, and everyone within our broader business circle, to understand that clearly and unmistakably." Samuel, standing quietly at the back of the hall beside Maria, felt a wave of relief and gratitude wash over him as he listened to Dominic's firm, public vindication. Years of quiet, honest work had nearly been destroyed by a single false accusation, and yet here, finally, the truth had been restored fully and publicly. After the announcement concluded, several of Dominic's associates approached Samuel directly, offering their sincere apologies for ever doubting his integrity. Samuel accepted each apology graciously, though his gaze frequently drifted toward Dominic, gratitude evident clearly in his expression for the younger man's decisive, honorable action. Later that evening, once the hall had emptied and the estate had grown quiet once more, Dominic found Samuel sitting alone in the garden, reflecting quietly on the day's events. He approached carefully, settling onto the bench beside him. "Thank you for that," Samuel said sincerely, without turning immediately toward Dominic. "You didn't have to make such a public statement on my behalf." Dominic considered his words carefully before responding. "You saved my life once, without hesitation, without expecting anything in return," he said honestly. "The least I could do was ensure the world knew the truth about your character, especially after such an unjust accusation nearly destroyed everything you've built." Samuel turned to study him closely, warmth and quiet respect evident clearly in his expression. "You've grown into someone your father would be genuinely proud of," he said sincerely. "I remember Alessandro speaking often about the kind of man he hoped you would become. I believe you've exceeded even his hopes." Dominic felt a lump form unexpectedly in his throat at Samuel's sincere words, memories of his father resurfacing with unexpected warmth rather than the usual complicated grief he typically associated with those recollections. "Thank you for saying that," he said quietly, genuine emotion evident clearly in his voice. "It means more than you probably realize." They sat together in comfortable silence for several long moments, the quiet garden offering a peaceful contrast to the tension and danger of recent weeks. Finally, Samuel spoke again, curiosity evident clearly in his tone. "May I ask you something personal, Mr. Reyes?" "Of course," Dominic replied. "And please call me Dominic." Samuel nodded, appreciating the gesture. "Dominic, then," he said warmly. "I've noticed the way you look at my daughter. Care to explain that to an old man who's earned the right to ask directly?" Dominic felt himself flush slightly, caught off guard by Samuel's direct, knowing question. "I've developed genuine feelings for Maria," he admitted honestly, deciding candor was the only appropriate response given everything Samuel had already sacrificed for his family. "I understand the complications such feelings might create, given her position within my household, and given everything that's happened these past weeks." Samuel studied him carefully, a thoughtful, knowing expression crossing his weathered features. "Complications aside," he said gently, "how do you truly feel about her?" Dominic considered the question seriously, wanting to answer with complete honesty rather than deflect toward practical concerns. "She's the most genuine, courageous person I've encountered in a very long time," he said sincerely. "Her love for you, her willingness to risk everything simply by rushing forward that day in the courtyard, her calm strength throughout this entire ordeal, I've come to admire her deeply, beyond simple gratitude or professional respect." Samuel smiled warmly, genuine approval evident clearly in his expression. "That's exactly the kind of answer I was hoping to hear," he said sincerely. "Maria has sacrificed a great deal for our family since her mother passed away. She deserves someone who sees her fully, not simply as a maid, but as the remarkable woman she truly is." Dominic nodded, sincerity evident clearly in his own expression. "I intend to make my feelings known to her directly," he said honestly. "Though I wanted to speak with you first, given everything our families have shared." Samuel placed a gentle hand on Dominic's shoulder, warmth and approval evident clearly in his gesture. "You have my blessing, Dominic," he said sincerely. "Whatever happens between you and Maria, I trust it will be built on the same honesty and integrity you've shown throughout this entire situation." Grateful for Samuel's genuine approval, Dominic soon found Maria finishing her evening duties within the estate's quiet library, the same room where their unconventional connection had first deepened weeks earlier. She looked up as he entered, warmth evident clearly in her expression at his presence. "I just spoke with your father," Dominic said carefully, approaching her slowly. Maria studied him curiously, sensing the significance behind his words. "About what?" she asked gently. Dominic took a steadying breath before continuing honestly. "About you," he admitted sincerely. About the genuine feelings I've developed for you these past weeks, feelings that go far beyond simple gratitude toward your father or professional respect toward someone within my household. Maria felt her heart begin racing as she listened carefully, hope and vulnerability evident clearly in her own expression. "And what did he say?" she asked softly. "He gave us his blessing," Dominic replied warmly, taking her hand gently in his own. "Maria, these past weeks have shown me clearly what genuine connection, courage, and love truly mean. I'd like the opportunity to build something real and meaningful with you, if you're willing to accept it." Tears of happiness began forming gently in Maria's eyes as she processed his heartfelt words. "I've felt the same way," she admitted softly, her voice trembling with genuine emotion. "From the moment you froze in that courtyard, recognizing my father, I sensed there was more depth and integrity within you than your reputation ever suggested." Dominic smiled warmly, genuine happiness spreading through him as he gently pulled her into a tender embrace. "Then let's discover that depth together," he said softly, "free from fear, free from complicated boundaries, built instead on genuine trust and mutual respect." In the weeks and months that followed, Dominic and Maria's relationship blossomed steadily into something genuinely meaningful, openly acknowledged throughout the estate and eventually within their broader business circles. Samuel, delighted by his daughter's newfound happiness, remained close to the estate, gradually taking on a trusted advisory role within Dominic's organization, his decades of honest financial expertise once again properly valued and respected. Maria, no longer working strictly as a household maid, gradually transitioned into a role managing several charitable initiatives Dominic began funding, using her natural warmth and intelligence to make a genuine, positive difference within their community. She often reflected on how remarkably her life had transformed since that terrifying afternoon in the courtyard, when fear for her father's safety had led her to unknowingly reveal a connection neither she nor Dominic had anticipated. Anthony, meanwhile, faced serious consequences for his reckless greed and deception, his standing within the criminal underworld completely destroyed, a clear warning to others who might consider similar betrayals within Dominic's organization. One peaceful evening, nearly a year after the frightening events that had first brought them together, Dominic and Maria sat together in the same courtyard where their story had truly begun, watching the sunset paint gentle colors across the sky. Samuel joined them quietly, settling comfortably nearby, genuine contentment evident clearly in his weathered expression. "It's remarkable," Samuel said thoughtfully, breaking the peaceful silence, "how a single act of protection, all those years ago, could eventually lead to something so genuinely beautiful." Dominic took Maria's hand gently, warmth and gratitude evident clearly in his own expression. "Sometimes the debts we owe lead us toward blessings we never anticipated," he said sincerely, glancing warmly toward Maria. Maria smiled softly, genuine happiness and peace evident clearly in her own expression. "And sometimes," she added gently, "the courage to protect the people we love leads us exactly where we're meant to be." As the sun set gently behind them, casting warm, golden light across the peaceful courtyard, Dominic, Maria, and Samuel sat together as a genuine, unconventional family, bound not simply by circumstance or debt, but by genuine love, gratitude, and the remarkable courage that had first brought them together on that frightening, unforgettable afternoon. What had begun as a desperate cry for mercy in a tense, dangerous courtyard had transformed completely into something none of them could have ever anticipated. Genuine healing, restored honor, and a lasting love built upon the powerful, unbreakable bonds of loyalty, courage, and gratitude that connected their families across generations.